what happens. Good sides are able to steady themselves, and they did really well to steady themselves and show they were a real mature team, and they've come a long way in their development.
If I had have used this clip and not told you Vossi was talking about Brisbane, I would have had you fooled that he was talking about us. Here is who Carlton were missing in round 0. In green, the amount of games the Lions have won at the Gabba in the last 60 games prior to this one. At this venue, they were up 46 points against a depleted Carlton side. Yet somehow, some way, the Blues ended up winners.
We'll absolutely remember this day as a team.
We will remember this too, Vossi. No matter how you look at it, this team looked gone. And yet, time and time again, like they showed last year with challenges thrown at them, they found a way. With Vossi saying,
it was just incredibly impressive.
And today we look at how they recovered and how impressive it truly was. Let's go. Carlton's first quarter was an absolute shocker and far from Carlton's identity, playing into Brisbane's hands. Pre-game, Sam Doherty commented on what was their undoing last year in the prelim final against Brisbane. This is what he said.
We were very good in the contest in that first quarter, and then turned into a bit more of a transition game. So our ability to defend off that transition and then score was a big factor of last year's prelim.
In this first quarter, an ability was much rather an inability. The stats are damning. Even for all this, the Blues later miserable 7 tackles, embodying the ease of nature and quality in which the Lions moved the ball for all that possession they had. Vossi had this to say pre-game about transition defence.
Clearly the way the ball comes in and the pressure that we have on the ball is going to be a very important part of the night. And
when you put all these stats together, coinciding with the 158 pressure rating, it signals disaster, which it was. You can see in this early first quarter example, the Blues don't have that luxury of holding it within their forward half because they're met with a wall of Lions pressure before they even enter their forward 50. Note that the Lions pressure means we can't unleash a kick into the forward 50 or have an outlet forward and are pressured into overusing it. This enabled a quick rebound for Brisbane, and this was common throughout the early going. You just see with this example another clearance, yes, but yesterday we talked about how Harry being in the ruck without 2 key forwards, obviously with Curnow on the bench, no Pitnet playing, takes away one of your bookends. This kick isn't to a focal point in your forward 50 because you've only got Charlie deeper in isolation, no one at centre half forward. Wilmot with an excellent reading of the game, and to feed into this idea of us being a pace slower earlier on, all the Blues players basically assume that Wilmot is obligated to go back on the mark when this bloke is rapid, and if he sees an opening, he's taking the game on. This wasn't my observation, it was actually Fox's, but Harry needed to understand he has a responsibility defensively more so than if he was in the forward 50 kicking goals. He's actually let Danaher run into space and be that connector, and it sends Carlton's defence into disarray. Kemp's come forward, McGovern has also tried to get across, but he doesn't have a sniff. That has meant that Boyd has had to do the defensive percentage play, where you block off the easy one short and challenge the kicker to go farther. But this is Joe Danaher we're talking about, who can reach this target even if that man's running further away from the kicker. And there's so much goddamn space that it doesn't have to be pinpoint precise. You can afford to sit it up a bit higher, and Zorko can also afford to pull up his run and wait for it. It was these sorts of sequences which I think really summarised Brisbane's early match dominance and freedom, scoring from the back half, and equally the Blues' struggle in combating that, which left them in dire straits heading into quarter 2. But you slowly started to see things normalise in the second quarter for the Blues as they stabilised. And in my eyes, the big moments of the game actually happened in the second quarter, not later on. This is what Vossi had to say about the second quarter.
Well, I felt like in probably about somewhere through the second quarter, we started to get some of our game together. Wasn't all there. We were just making so many mistakes, almost giving the ball back. Clearly when you get stuck in your back half, it's a hard night to be able to defend, especially with Brisbane's firepower. They will score.
And this example really embodies elements of their game starting to seep in, though the Lions were still holding firm. You can see the Blues try to activate the corridor with Sard taking initiative, but this isn't a spot you want to turn it over. You want a bit more depth, so you have a bit more recovery time on the turnover if it happens. You'd like this Blues player to actually put on a block to potentially allow Sard to pivot. That'll make this pass more accessible. Because Sard goes to Boyd, who is shallower, that means the only way to get by the zone and reach Chera is by going over. and the positioning of this line means that the handball back to Sard is also probably closed off. If you find Chera first, one of Boyd or Sard can bypass, and that space perhaps can be used to your advantage. It's really just little nuanced details, like a shepherd, which can really change the way possessions pan out. And from then on, the Lions, as we have said, were incredibly reactive to turnover, hence why Charlie Cameron's leaked out and there's multiple others open or sprinting to get open. However, what was a glimpse became more commonplace, with the backline becoming more solidified and thus more possession to be felt, which started to feed the possession, contested, and territory elements of Carlton's game, even with Brisbane holding firm. The Blues enjoyed a 10-minute block where the ball was in Brisbane's forward half for 91% of the time, shipping off 10 consecutive inside 50s without more than a goal being conceded. And this is the most important stage of the game in my eyes, where this momentum shifted, even if the Blues couldn't progress it forward or register scores. Very much a game of tug of war in this instance. But this is the moment that everything changed. Now notice, Charlie Cameron points out to Hugh McCluggage to take Akers, and usually Akers would probably lead towards the boundary line, but he points over the top instead and sends his run more centrally. This kick had broken down for a large chunk of the second quarter, but this is one of the few occasions we came up clean, with no Harris Andrews and Charlie neutralizing his direct matchup to ensure this one was uncontested. Being more central means runs can go both sides of Akers. That promotes minimal restriction with what you can do. The rest of this you can't really draw up, but the result was more damaging than perceived at first glance. The Blues had released the pressure valve, and they'd finally seen a reward for a style of play that hadn't quite come together basically the entirety of the second quarter. As I said, this changed everything. A goal resetting the game in the center created opportunity for a few center bounce wins, which comes with better accessibility to your forward line, which we had been starved of, yet is so paramount to Carlton's success as they force the issue on Brisbane. Now, the Blues could do the role reversal, set up their structure, and force stoppages as they neutralized aerial contests and repeated forward entries. From the Curnow goal onwards to the 2:15 mark of the second quarter, via the broadcast feed, the Blues had secured the last 7 inside 50s, a complete swing of momentum. Now, Michael Voss had this to say post-game about momentum.
It goes to show what momentum can do in footy. You know, when you've got it, very hard to stop it.
We can talk about big second quarter moments, but none more vital than this Sam Doherty knock-on, because this very entry ended Carlton's run of consecutive inside 50s. How deflating if the Lions scored on the stroke of the halftime break after our dominance with one solitary entry. Doc had me fooled that there was no ACL and meniscus issue because he clutched up here, utilizing that spare man that arose because of Doherty's presence and the number rolling over. A crucial touch for obvious reasons. The Blues reached halftime with a strong foundation and their momentum intact. The Blues ended the half with the last 5 scores of the quarter, and they had held a 16% higher amount of possession in the final 10 minutes of the half. Vossi discussed how, off this shift, the lads were pretty bought in and positive, and Cripper attested to this, saying post-game,
Vossi led it really well. The players executed what the coaches wanted, and we play our best when we're playing hard footy and playing with high energy, and that's what we're able to do.
Carlton started the second half explosively with a blistering stretch from the back end of the second to speak to that element of momentum. Vossi stressed being dominant after forcing opposition mistakes, saying,
where we get our opportunities to be able to punish the opposition, we need to be able to maximise that a little bit more.
And when we observe and compare the numbers from the first quarter to the period of time where the lead was erased, it's a different Carlton. Whilst Brisbane still outdid the Blues for inside 50s, Carlton were far more efficient and devastating. Let's take a look. This is stock standard textbook Carlton football. Kick ball to contest, ball drops to the ground, win that contest, and navigate your way out. Breakaway as runners are tracking the path of the football. And you will see at various points there are multiple of these guys sprinting past the contest. And if they get there at the right time and the Blues don't have the ball, they're absolutely ploughing through, with Ryan Lester slower than a 1G connection getting this hand pass away. You'll notice that Carroll is one of those runners who's sitting behind waiting to run through if a blue has their back to goal. And he's in an incredibly attacking position, well prior for his smooth operator type movement and ball use, which benefits him strongly in the end. Gets this handball, notice how he slows up just to steady himself, knowing he's got that separation and had it since he was in the center square, and bang. Fuck Harry McKay in the goal square, this is his time. Cripper said post-game,
he's had a massive pre-season in terms of his body and also his mindset, and he was so confident out there tonight, and sometimes you just need that game where you feel like you belong, and I reckon he's got that now.
A goal like that absolutely speaks to what Cripper was saying. The Blues had scored 5 goals in 11.5 minutes, and that's with time on. Absurd efficiency. The Blues had kicked 45 of the last 46 points, tracing back to that 46-point deficit. Blistering. Do I need to tell you the Lions were absolutely shitting themselves at this point? I will just let the footy do the talking here. Carlton's 8th in a row, and their 4th goal from turnover in the quarter. Their first lead of the game, 25 minutes ago, down 46. What the actual fuck? Harry goes up for a mark super late in the quarter, but I think this reflects Carlton's rally. And we discussed this last week with H. You've got your key forward not only neutralising a great aerial presence, but also at ground level that follow-up to ensure the ball up is at this part of the ground, not in our defensive 50, is so admirable, especially given the quarter's nearly run its course. Doing 2 in 1 shows that work rate we displayed on the night, and Harry specifically, as he registered over 14 kilometers run this match. And ultimately, that is what is required. The score at 3/4 time was 72-71, and we know all about the big moments that happened in the 4th quarter, but what about all those nuanced details that get swept under the rug? Let's take a look. This win by Adam Saad was absolutely vital after Hugh McCluggage starts a break for Brisbane. Adam Saad situates himself superbly here because Eric Hipwood is a left footer who looks inside but backs his dominant side. Saad is positioned between Cameron and the space which favours that dominant side, so Cameron's going to find it difficult to rake in a mark with all this ground to make up and a player to get through. If Cameron does get this side of him, he's compressed into the boundary line, so it's very much a win-win for the Blues. We see the latter take full effect because Saad just needs to slowly nudge him towards the line tactically until Charlie evidently runs out of space. Now, from the 8-minute mark of the last quarter, courtesy of the broadcast feed, when Charlie Cameron converts, only 1 goal is kicked from that point on. 1 score, 1 goal. Now, everyone, of course, is going to talk about that 1 goal kicked by Harry, but let's glorify something that happened prior, and Paddy Cripps preached at full time Carlton's ability to execute game plan. Let's take a look.
Yeah, we're able to get it into our bigs 1-on-1, set the ground up, and then we're able to put pressure on our forward half.
Now, this is a huge Jack Carroll free one here. First to the football, head over it. Believe it or not, after this free kick, the ball does not re-enter Brisbane's forward half until after Harry kicks the goal. If Carroll doesn't secure this stoppage free kick, do Carlton ever gain that ability to set the ground up and lock it inside their attacking half until they get that reward through Harry? Now, for the Harry mark inside forward 50, all I'm going to do is apply my exact description of a good kick to Harry from the last game that had a similar situation. Do a side-by-side comparison and let that analysis do the talking. This is an excellent sort of kick, the same type of kick I like as I've mentioned, and that space opens up again because the smalls are roundabout, not quite in front, and notice how there's one demon in Lever getting shielded off it to open Harry up. And so we all know what happens next. Now, the final minute, Adam Chera, crucial touches. First, he reads the tap and delays a clearance. Then you'll see him on the back of the stoppage, and whilst Akers is on the last line, Chera being a good 5 meters in front of him to chop the kickoff means there's less vulnerability in you getting forcefully sent over the line, obviously tying the game. Then smothering a Dunkley kick, which could have gone anywhere. Who knows? And I don't want my imagination to intervene. By the game's end, Carlton had a list of strong contributors, and the Blues wouldn't be able to say they defied history without such a collective effort. Through individual brilliance, a bit of luck, the Lions' inaccuracy, and Vossi's tactical adjustment, The Blues killed off an 11-year losing drought at the Gabba and secured their biggest win from a halftime deficit since 2007. What are your takeaways from the game? And more specifically, this analysis. For you, did this game highlight flaw or did it highlight strength? Maybe a bit of both. Make sure to show your support and stick around because we're doing analysis all over again next week for round 1, not round 2, against Richmond. So until then, have a great rest of your day, stay safe, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye for now.